there is a need, a true need
Mhm.
for people to be able to practically use the teachings, especially of Christ, but also other ascended masters, to embrace the energy of who we truly are as the breath of God. You are the one with the breath of God in you. You have free will to use that as you will. How can you be separated from his breath? You're his breath. How does he send his breath to hell?
In my online community, Love Covered Life Academy, I am running a free 5-day activation, Awaken Your Magic 2.0. We're going to be deep diving into metaphysical understanding of how the energy centers work and the energy flow in the body works, a powerful guided meditation to support you in your journey, and daily practices that can help us embody higher states of consciousness. I'm so excited. In our last Awaken Your Magic activation, we had over 400 people join. I would love to double or even triple that amount this time. Check the link in the description to sign up for free. Can't wait to see you there. I am here today with Marta Riggin. She is a registered nurse, spiritual transformation counselor, and energy healer with over 30 years of training and experience. She also has a background in Christianity and moving from that into energy healing, and a whole fascinating story there of discovering the true teachings of Christ and integrating those in her work. So, Marta, I'm so glad you're here. I'm really looking forward to diving into your journey. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Melissa, for having me. I've been really looking forward to speaking with you too.
Yes, of course. So let's start with just a little bit of background. We will dive into your journey, but before we start, just to get people's interest peaked here, could you share the different kinds of energy healing modalities that you work with today?
Certainly. So, just kind of as a teaser, I was indoctrinated, I guess you would say, from real little because I had a very ill mother. And she taught me to come in and just put my hands on her when she was having migraine headaches or pain. So, from, I mean, little, 3, 5 years old, I was sort of trained to use my natural healing abilities. And we will definitely talk about the path I was on. But now, what I do is I have a private practice in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I integrate advanced bodywork techniques with energy healing formats like Reiki, polarity therapy, acupressure. I use chakra clearing techniques and grounding techniques. I've been trained by people like Dr. John Barnes in myofascial release, and also many energy healing techniques like quantum touch, healing touch, therapeutic touch, all over the course of the last 30 something years. So when I work and practice with people, I take them through a journey. So I'm not what I would call a one and done kind of practitioner. I don't encourage people to come in just for one energy healing session. It's not really entertainment or just an experience. I want to help them heal. So I integrate those healing techniques with a spiritual counseling practice that is founded and rooted mostly in the teachings of Christ, but those definitely also coordinate with a lot of metaphysics. Current metaphysics is really delving into why energy healing works and being able to prove it, which I love that because I love the science behind all of it. So I use teachings from people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is on the cutting edge with energy healing techniques and repatterning your subconscious, using techniques that will help get rid of those old belief systems. And, Jesus taught, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? And so going into these old patterns, even sometimes ancestral line patterns, quote scripture quite often, probably, but, the Bible also talks about the sins of the father passed down to the third and fourth generation. So there's ancestral old patterns that need to be broken as well. And so I integrate both. I take the spiritual counseling side, and I've had teaching through Elijah House Ministries and other platforms in spiritual counseling, and then I integrate that with energy healing modalities and body
Mm.
work. So, yeah.
It just makes me so excited just listening to you explain this because this is so powerful.
Mhm.
These modalities are ways that people can truly heal And as
Yeah.
I was telling you before we began recording, I am hoping to see this coming more and more to the forefront and seeing these alternative, we say alternative options becoming more mainstream and widely accepted and understood. And like you said, with the science that's backing this up now, like with Joe Dispenza's work and others, I'm just hoping to see consciousness shift and become more accepting and have these things become more available. So that's one of the reasons I was really excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was a little concerned that maybe I wouldn't be woohoo enough, like I don't have near death experiences and I do have some miraculous healings happen, but it's not always that an angel came and visited me or someone's dead loved one came in, I have those experiences occasionally, but I don't advertise myself as a medium or a channel because I really think that there is a niche of a need, a true need
Mhm.
for people to be able to practically use the teachings, especially of Christ, but also other ascended masters, to embrace the energy of who we truly are as the breath of God. The
Mhm.
quantum physics rule that says energy doesn't change. I mean, it's one group of energy. It's not created or destroyed. It just morphs into different forms. It's the first law of thermodynamics, and the metaphysics teachers really like to talk about that. But when we can understand that that's the energy that's in us, we're not just a body, that's the energy that's in us, then we can use that energy to truly heal. And to me, that was the core of what Jesus was teaching, that Christ conscious energy. If you have that belief in you, then that can shift you and make you well. And so many times people will, we talked about this a little bit before, attend church and they'll just listen to the teachings and maybe get some education about how to integrate that in their life. But if they're not taught that Jesus was trying to equip them with that same power, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, I and the Father are one. That same energy that's in you is also, that's in me is also in you. Here's the energy that's available to you. Come on, Peter, get out of the boat, right? Where can we help people to finally have them understand that and to embrace that power so they can truly heal? So,
I
yeah.
could not agree with you more about that. And there are so many podcasts out there now. This wasn't the case when I started, but now I like to say the near death experience niche is so saturated now. And it's so incredibly important putting people's personal stories out there, and it's so incredibly powerful to helping people to expand their awareness and, soothe their fears about life after death and their grief and missing their loved ones who have passed. But I'm personally, at this point, so much more interested in how do we take this knowledge and embody it?
Mhm.
How can we use this knowledge practically to shift our consciousness now and awaken spiritually, collectively? And so that's where work like what you're doing is so important and so important to spread awareness about it.
Thank you, Melissa. I really do feel that. And I know my clients feel that. I have so many people that come in and say, I haven't ever had anyone help me this way, or help
Mhm.
me where there's a permanent fix or where I can understand it for myself and then use the tools to continually get better, get more and more victory instead of having to go and be dependent on somebody, for a session to get their energy in the right place, and that's what I like to do. I like to equip people.
Right. Okay, so let's dive into your story a little bit. Could you share more of your personal background? You mentioned that, or I mentioned that you were raised Christian. You also mentioned that your mom taught you how to do energy healing as a young child. So, anything that you want to share about your journey?
Yeah, well, I was raised in Lutheran parochial school, which is very interesting because I call it the hellfire and brimstone school. I was raised primarily by my mother and my grandmother. My parents got divorced when I was 3. And my grandmother was the staunch Lutheran. She was the one who would say, if you don't have a slip and hose on under that skirt, you're not leaving the house. I mean, she was tough. But it's also very interesting because even though she was very tough and she stuck to the tenets of the Lutheran teachings, she actually married her aunt's husband. They were divorced, and I believe that he divorced his wife to marry my grandmother. Oh, wow.
And that was the man who actually started the church, part of the foundational members that started the Lutheran church that I attended. And so, there's one way of thinking over here, and then there's another way of behaving over here. But then if you get it wrong, you're going to hell. But then yet here's all of these sins that, we've participated in, and somehow we're okay. So so it's very interesting. And then I watched that same woman, my grandmother, struggle with her death because she couldn't forgive her mother for abandoning her as a child. And she struggled for 10 days, couldn't die, thought she was going to hell because of this belief system. So, where is the freedom in that? You know, he came to set us
Mm,
free, right?
right.
Jesus came to set the captives free. So, I watched this conundrum and with my parents too. My mother was a registered nurse. I'm sorry, she was an LPN. She had a lot of, illness and sickness. She had cancer when I was a kid. She had migraine headaches. She taught me to come in and put my hands on her to help. But then, she was also very ill. And so she brought in alternative, what they would call alternative then ways of vitamins and growing food in our garden and friends who were very hippie-ish who, taught me transcendental meditation when I was 9, and so here again is a conflict. The Lutheran teachings would say, that's all of the devil. But yet my mom is demonstrating a certain way of living and behaving. And even with her, sexual background, she was married 3 times and had many relationships. And then my father as well actually was an atheist until he was, I think, in his mid 40s when he had a conversion experience, which was fantastic for him because it served him in his end life. But watching these behaviors in my parents not lining up with what I'm being taught. And I think that's a lot of people's experience. It's do as we say, not as we do. When where did Jesus go? Jesus didn't go to the religious leaders to reaffirm, their strictness. He went to the people who were in their sickness and their need for him, right? Again, to set the captives free. And he related to them where they were at. And he said, don't judge them. The woman caught in adultery, he went around to all of her accusers and said, you without sin cast the first stone. And then came to her and said, I'm not accusing you either. And he's the embodiment of God our Father, who is not accusing us either, right? There's not a
Mhm.
punishment for all these things, right? Jesus was demonstrating that to us. So where have we gotten off that mark, gotten out of that teaching for, a Catholic Church scenario where they took his teachings and then made it about fear and you're going to hell if you don't follow us and do what we say, right? Instead of empowering us the way that I believe Jesus was trying to empower us with, again, Peter, get out of the boat, you know, these things and more you will do yourselves and more than Jesus. Huh? Didn't all that power die with the apostles? That's what I got taught. No.
Mm.
Lo, I will be with you till the end of the age, right? God's the same, Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forever, right? So these are the things that are at the core of my current teachings and my struggle that included, for me, suicidal depression. My mother had suicidal depression too. She tried to kill herself twice. So watching these dynamics and being so torn with, if Jesus is salvation for us, and then we shouldn't struggle or have problems after this if he's rectified us as, these terrible sinners to the Father, why is it still so much torture and pain? Right? Why is there still so much depression in me? And I sought that answer out for my entire life. From very little, I felt very connected to God, very connected to Jesus, memorized scripture. I was the first child at 10 years old to be on the adult witness team, knocking on doors, with the grown-ups trying to, compel people to Christ. I served as in leadership roles. My youth group, I was, the vice president of my youth group for a couple years. I attended Awanas and memorized scripture like a crazy woman. Just I wanted to go to camp, so I would memorize all these scriptures so that I could get to go. So, and then even as a young adult, I joined the Navy, and I had some interesting exposures. But it was always growing spiritually, always trying to stay connected. And in my late 20s, I had a charismatic experience that shifted me out of here's this hellfire and brimstone mindset that I can't reconcile to, oh, here's speaking in tongues and here's hands on healing. And these things feel more in line with the gifts that I've been shown and the things that I feel are familiar to me and that I want to pursue. And so
that put me on a journey, long story short, to end up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, attending Victory Bible Institute, where, I thought I was called into the ministry. And I spent time doing medical missions as a nurse in Mozambique, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. And through that time, there was always something off because I was always still depressed and anxious, highly anxious, having to be medicated too, especially as a hospice nurse, because that's what I did primarily. And begging out to God, can if I'm going to serve you this way, if I'm going to pack all my stuff in a car and leave my family and come to this church experience because I feel called into the ministry, can you not at least relieve me of the depression and anxiety? That'll make me emotional. Right? Because that was, oh my gosh, so hard. And then even in the charismatic church, we haven't talked about this, but I would have experiences where I would know things, prophetic giftings, which is why I had such a hard time earlier because there was nobody that knew what to do with me with words of knowledge and feeling led to put my hands on people and having them fall out. And, what is that? No, who can help me? Who can train me? And here I am in a charismatic church, and they have a pastor, the founder, Pastor Billy Joe, who's dying, and I'm hearing he's going to die, and here's why. And they're rallying everyone saying he's going to live and not die and declare the works of the Lord, and I'm head of the intercession team for the student body, and they're calling me in to pray. And I'm like, I'm hearing he's going to go. And nobody wants to hear that from me. Right. And so even in the charismatic church, the conflict that was there kind of felt like the prophet that gets stoned. It's just like, where is there that space for me? And it took that experience to finally just really break me out of what I felt I had become cultized. I wouldn't watch anything but TBN. I wouldn't listen to anything but Christian music. I was so sold out that at one point I'd been married during the before time frame of this and actually lost a marriage over pursuing my faith so hard. I had quit my job and felt called to go stomp around my church for 3 hours a day for 9 months and speaking in tongues, feeling the power of God in the sanctuary in this little Baptist church, again, where nobody knew what to do with me. Having these incredible, intense experiences with the Holy Spirit and with God the Father in the presence of Jesus. And still feeling, judged, feeling criticized, feeling like we don't know what to do with her. Maybe she's crazy. And like I said, I even lost a marriage over that. So working at it now, I look back because that was 2000 when I moved to Tulsa, and having to, I look at it now and I go, why did you put me all through all that? And what I hear is you are the one with the breath of God in you. You have free will to use that as you will. I haven't put you through anything. This was all a choice. You wanted these experiences. You thought you had some kind of special calling. You chose to go there and do all those things. And perhaps you needed to do it that extremely to finally get broken out and woken up that that wasn't all the truth. Right. So I spent a little time in a unity church after about a year of shutting everything down and just saying no, and started to find some some things that felt more like truth. Once I had also shut down that voice that said everything outside of your Christian teachings are of the devil, so don't look at any of it. I got a book called Autobiography of Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, and that was transformative. Love him. Oh my God. That was transformative to me because here's stories about masters who are demonstrating the same powers that Jesus did. And for me, well, actually, not the first time to hear it because in world religions, I've been taught about Zoroaster, who was 500 years before Jesus, who pretty much had an identical life, the virgin birth, the sacrificing, the miracles. So there's so many other stories and that you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. Scripture just started to just ring in me. It's like, what is this that I haven't been taught, that nobody's told me, that every time I've wanted to explore or felt inspired by the Spirit to explore things, that's of the devil, you know, that's of the devil. And so that and books like Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and then starting to explore Dr. Joe Dispenza, where he takes these metaphysical concepts and starts to use them practically for people's healing to rewire their brains. I'm like, this feels better. I'm suddenly not depressed. And, if I debated about whether to say this, I'm going to say this. To me, the deepest, darkest story here is if there is a Satan, and I believe there is because we put so much belief into that. So it's a construct that we've made real. And he is the accuser of the brethren, and he's been around for millennia. What a powerful stinking story that he might take Jesus's teachings and twist them against the very thing he was trying to do, which was show us our power, right? Show us who we really are as the breath of God, to make it a teaching about you're going to hell and here's all the fear and you're not worthy. What a great manipulation. What a master manipulation. Because to me, that wasn't Jesus's message. It was healing, it was belief, it was the power, that's available to you. And so, I think a big wake-up call for me too is when I started to do self-realization fellowship meditation, which is Paramahansa Yogananda's church group, if you wanna call it that. And I arrived at someone's home, and their altar was set up with all these pictures of their teachers, right? And guess who was featured as a teacher? Here's a picture of Jesus. Why is Jesus on your altar? Oh, well, don't you know? He was in the Middle East. He was one of our masters. He was one of the yogis that we revere. And then there's so many stories, so we can go down that route. But I've done a lot of study since then. I've opened up my understanding with all of these other anecdotal, powerful stories and other teachings that have given me peace. Given me peace, where before I had depression and anxiety. So, that's a little bit about my background.
Thank you for sharing. I can relate on so many levels because I also had several years in the charismatic church as well. So everything that you said was like my experience as well. I really would like to dive into your experience with Jesus and how do you view him now? How do you view his teachings now? And we could probably spend the rest of the hour on this because it's such a fascinating topic. But I guess let's just start out with who do you think that he was and why did he come here in the first place?
Well, I still believe the story about him, and, I'm still more strongly connected to his archetype, to his, life, than I am any other master and teacher. Not that I think my way is the only way, but it's personal for me. I believe that he was an ascended master. I believe that he came for the reason that he said, to set the captives free. He didn't come to start Christianity. He didn't start Christianity. It wasn't his mission or purpose. Every time someone tried to venerate him or make him, more than just the teacher that he wanted to be, he said, "Stop, quit putting the focus on me. Don't go out and tell everybody what I did." He came to set the captives free. He came to minister to the brokenhearted. He came to find those people that didn't need one more dose of religion and demonstrate to them what their power was to heal, to raise the dead, to make, a lot of food out of a little bit of food, to pull a coin out of a fish's mouth, to walk on the water, to calm the storms. I believe that all of those things, and again, we could get into the hocus pocus of it. I have calmed storms before. I've watched other people do it. I have friends that have all kinds of testimonies. I believe that all of those powers are available to us today. I believe that's what he was coming to show us. Do I wanna get into the debate about, was he the only son of God? Well, he said we're all sons of God. And when he said this and more you'll do yourselves, I don't believe that he was trying to make himself the only path, no. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it now, and that is what I use to help people, and it does still, to this day, set the captives free. It's helping them break out of these depressed, accused, shamed, guilty, anxious, angry mindsets to understand, the fruits of the Spirit: love, peace, joy, gentleness, goodness, kindness, self-control, and, the Bible teaches, to take your thoughts captive. Take every thought captive to the cause of Christ consciousness. Why? Because we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but powers and principalities in the heavenly realms. Woo, what does that mean? It means there are energies there that get a hold of us, that find a home in us, that like to feed. on all those lower level emotions. And if we don't do what Jesus demonstrated with casting the demons out, that's what you want to call it. Let's cast those energies out. Let's confront those energies. Let's take our power back. Who are we really as these breath of God beings? And then fill the house, right? With whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is of good report. Think on these things. It's a commandment for us in the Bible. Why? So that we can heal truly at a depth and a level that Jesus was trying to demonstrate. So, does that answer your question completely? Is there something more you want to know about that?
No, that was great. I'm curious, have you heard of Dolores Cannon?
Oh, yeah,
Have you read her
RTP.
book, They Walked with Jesus? Share with you, this really lines up with what you're saying.
Okay.
So there were several people, 3, I think. It's been a while since I read it too, so don't quote me on it. But she found a few people who had past lives with Jesus
Mm.
in her regression work. And so she learned a lot of interesting information. According to one of the people that she regressed, Jesus was an Essene.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of historical evidence to back this up as well. And it's just very interesting when you go and find out what did the Essenes teach? What did they believe? Who were they? They were teaching these type of metaphysical ideas like oneness with God and the divinity of everything. And they were like they were well known for being hands-on healers. So it's just very interesting when you have that context to understand, like you said, Jesus didn't come to start Christianity. Christianity didn't even exist back then like it does 2,000 years later. He was a metaphysical teacher. He was a Jewish mystic who
Yeah.
was performing energy healing and had probably had psychic gifts and was teaching oneness.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, there's several teachers that teach about what is a Nazarene too. He was from Nazareth. The Bible says, does anything good come out of Nazareth? That was the joke. But then the "-ine" or suffix was a scene, right? Because
Right.
otherwise he would have been not a Nazarene, but a Nazarite, right? And so the Nazarene suffix is a kind of a lineage out of the Essenes. There's also a lot of controversy about his missing years. So we see him at the temple up to 12, about his father's business, but then there's just this weird lack of anything. It said, and then he grew in favor and stature, and he comes back in at what, 33, right? Well, where are all those scriptures? There's a lot of debate about, was there stuff removed? He wasn't buried by his father. He was buried in Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. So did his father die? The Chosen series kind of features that maybe his father died. And in those days, most of the time, you needed to be raised in a trade. So he would have gone with probably his mother's brother, who was Joseph of Arimathea, a tin trader across the Middle East. And there's anecdotal stuff all over about Jesus being all over the Middle East, being trained, working with the people. When he confronted the religious leaders, very similar to the Jewish stories. And so, yeah, who's to know exactly for sure? I don't claim to know, explicitly. I don't think anybody can, but I do know what feels energetically right. And that's, maybe we could segue here too. That's what I bring into my practice. I work intuitively. I stay connected as much as I can to that Christ focused energy. I don't try to pull in a lot of other entities or energies, although I will say sometimes people say they see angelic beings in the healing room. Sometimes I feel them or will hear things from them. Sometimes, if it's important to the person's healing, I will hear from a dead loved one. I don't bill myself as a medium or a channel again, like I said, but when it seems to be relevant, sometimes those energies will come through. And I think that's in line with scripture too. There's all kinds of references to angels, and other beings, even reincarnation, really, honestly, in the scriptures, which is heavily debatable and one of the control points for Christianity, because Jesus doesn't refute when the religious leaders and the people are talking about who he was. And he says, well, who do you say that I am? And the people say, well, some people think you're the reincarnation of Elijah. And he actually says, no, John was the reincarnation of Elijah. That was John. Who do you think? So he doesn't He doesn't say that doesn't reincarnation never happens, you know? And so there's just a lot of things there that we could dissect about who Jesus was and what he believed and what he was teaching. But yeah, those are some of the things that I want to bring into my healing practices. How can I reflect to people how he was empowering those people? A woman gets caught in adultery and he doesn't pick up a stone. That was tradition. If he was just raised by the Jewish leaders and that was his only upbringing, he would have picked up a stone. He would have stoned her. Instead, he goes around to all of the other people and says, "You without sin cast the first stone," right? And then this is pivotal in the work that I do. I love to use this line. He goes to the woman and he says, "Woman, where are your accusers?" How many times do we have these voices in our head that say, "Shame on you, guilt, and woe, you're going to hell?" Who's the accuser of the brethren? Jesus isn't demonstrating that. He's not saying, "You should go to hell for this. Shame on you. You need to declare me as the savior right now, or you're gonna." He never said that to anybody. He never said you need to declare me. He didn't say it to the thief on the cross. He said, "You're gonna be with me in paradise." And he looks at this woman and he says, "I don't accuse you either. Go and sin no more." And I've heard that the interpretation of the word sin actually means to miss the mark, like you're shooting at a target and you missed. And he's saying to her, "Hey, come on. I'm not sending you to hell for this. Let's go and maybe work at getting this right the next time. This choice hasn't served you so well." So, helping people find that power of knowing that there's not a force up there that's trying to strike you dead because you got it wrong. How fair would that be? How fair would that be? We're here to learn. Well, we didn't get sent down here with this, mandate of here's how you get it right, here's how you get it wrong, and there's punishment if you don't. How that wouldn't be fair. And even Jesus said that. You know, what what father, knowing that their child needs bread, would give them a stone or a snake? But he's gonna send you to hell? Sorry. Nope, don't
No.
believe it anymore.
Yeah, don't talk yeah.
No, but I don't believe it anymore. And how can we set the captives free? How can we help people find that same freedom from those lower level? I still think there's lower level energies that get in there, try to manipulate, they work their way in like a yeast. They find where you're vulnerable. And once they have you, getting free from that, unless you have help from a coach, or you really understand your power, that's difficult. And understanding who we are as the breath of God. Neither height, nor depth, nor power, nor principality can separate you from that. God formed you of the dust of the ground, breathed in you his breath of life. How can you be separated from his breath? You're his breath. How does he send his breath to hell? It's one energy. It's not created or destroyed, just changes forms. It's in you, it's in me. It's the force of God. Can you tap into that so that you can be healed instead of listening to these lower level voices? Whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is of good report. Think on these things. It is positive thinking power, but it's also embracing your real power. I always call it my Wonder Woman self. Powerful, God source being, breath of God being, right? When I am in that vibration, when I am vibrating at that rate, I cannot be sick. That's like water on the wicked witch. It's like an antibiotic on a bacteria. I can't be sick. I can only be well. That's a vibration. Look at the woman with the issue of blood, right? Jesus is walking in a crowd and she touches him. He didn't claim he healed her. He said, "Power went out of me. Who touched me?" And when she admits it, he looks at her and he says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Your belief in this power, maybe you thought it was power in me, but your belief has made you well," right? He was equipping us. Where can we help to equip each other?
I'd like to ask you about that. As an energy healer, this is something I've wondered for a long time. I know what I was taught in the charismatic church was that you had to have faith for healing, and if you did not well, if you were not healed, it's because you didn't have enough faith, basically. And in more of the new age spiritual community, it's maybe kind of something similar, but more of a metaphysical understanding of what's going on where you have to go in and rewire your thought patterns and have intention for the things that you want to create or for your own healing and raise your state of being to a place of already embodying this healing in order for it to manifest. From your perspective, does somebody have to have faith or intention for a physical healing to happen or any kind of miracle, I guess?
That's a really good question, honestly. Yes and no. I do believe it boils down to vibration. If you're using Christ, if you're using Jesus as the demonstration, there were many people that he healed. He did often say, "Your faith has made you well." But I also believe the metaphysics teachings of raising your vibration, right? And when I work with people, I watch them shift just by talking to them, just like I've been talking to you today. It's almost like the energy that I chose to hold. And I'm not saying I'm Jesus, but I believe that Jesus did this too. He accelerated his energy so high that he could walk down the road and people were getting healed. Being in the vicinity of that energy. Let's say you walked into Chernobyl, you can't see, smell, hear, taste the radiation that's there, but it's going to kill you. It doesn't matter what you believe, right? And so we're being constantly bombarded with energies, whether it's Wi-Fi or microwaves or radio waves or, that are affecting our health. That's not your belief or not your belief. You can jump off a building, the force of gravity is going to put you in the ground, whether you believe that or not. Right. So there is a place to understand that energy healing is helping, whether the person believes it or not. But I also believe that once that exposure to that energy healing is done, then you're walking back out into your own energetic platform. And that is in your belief system as well. What you're believing, you are making your reality. Two guys in traffic, one of them's road raging because there's an accident up there. Another guy is chilled out calling the boss saying, I'm gonna be late. It's perspective, there can be a same, incident, and it's about perspective, and wherever you're holding yourself, you're creating your experience, you're creating your reality, and that's definitely metaphysics 101. But I do see that play out. I've also read some really great authors, who have said that they've done a lot of research and experience. I wish I could remember the OB-GYN that wrote this book. She's it's one of those people, like I say, I've read so much and learned so much, I forget who said what, but her main statement after, going into so many double-blind research studies to look and doing all of this research herself was, if the person that was receiving healing work believed and the practitioner believed, the person got well. And it didn't matter what it was, whether it was real acupuncture or sham acupuncture or what. So, does belief also? Yeah, yeah, belief is huge. It influences it. So I believe it's both. I believe, there's a place where energy transform you, and there's a place where it is a lot about your own belief system.
That's very interesting. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you about the hands-on healing and how does that work? Like, what are the mechanisms? Are you like consciously directing energy or is it just raising your whole vibration or how does that work?
Mhm. I've studied so many different modalities and they all teach things a little different. And so I don't ever do just like a straight Reiki healing or a straight quantum touch. I follow intuition. I instinctively listen to what does the body need, and I go into that. And so I've had everything from someone who sat in my chair and I took them through forgiveness issues towards their ex-husband, and within 20 minutes they went from having frozen shoulders where they couldn't get their arms up to it's a miracle. Oh my gosh,
Really?
I can move. And I didn't touch them, right? We just worked on areas where she knew she had unforgiveness issues. And of course, you're talking about your throat center, your heart center, and all the way down your arms when you're talking about she had actually been strangled by this ex husband and had a restraining order against him. And we can be in the right all day long, but if we're still holding on to these energies in our body, it's hard to heal. So I start from that place with everyone before I just put my hands on them. But then the same woman, I love the story, a couple days later came in and had me do body work on her to make sure that everything was going to stick. And we did more unforgiveness work and I did body work on her. And she texted me the previous or the following day and said, I don't know what to make of this. I don't know if you're going to believe it, but my ex husband, who I haven't heard from in 4 years, called me. I didn't recognize the number. I picked it up and he said, please don't hang up. I just want to tell you, I'm so sorry for everything. And I want to pay off your $19,000 school loan. no
Wow.
strings attached, right? And so there's miracles that happen all the time like that. That's probably one of my biggest and most fun because what I see happening is as she released him, he felt that. What other explanation for someone not seeing you for 4 years, talking to you for 4 years, and then all of a sudden out of the blue, "I'm gonna pay off your student loan." So, the energy goes out like waves from us and affects everything in the ethers, and so it's gonna affect your personal experience when you do this kind of work. It's gonna release you, it's gonna release others, and everyone's gonna get healing from that. Right? And so there is a place to put my hands on people I do, and I watch people get free from pain. I come together, in agreement for people when they have urgent needs, and I've watched those needs be met. Also watched people shift their consciousness. There's a lot to the power of agreement. I had a client who really wanted a change in her love life and wanted more passion, and we did some work around that. This still blows my mind. She left the session, she walked out into the parking lot, and she came running back in the shop with a man who had left his car, who was chasing her back into the store saying, "Please just give me your number. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." I mean, so this stuff is powerful. This work is really powerful, and I don't wanna be the reason, for people reaching out to me or contacting me because they wanna manifest a miracle, but it is about where your energy's at. It is about what you're believing. It is about whether you still got forgiveness work or personal shame work or guilt work or anxiety issues that need to be worked through for you. So,
Those stories are incredible and just goes to show what is possible when we step into our power and
mm,
let go of things like energies of unforgiveness that are holding us back and manifesting things in our body.
right.
So, I'd like to ask you specifically, what would you say to people who A, might be coming out of a religious background and struggling with some of the teachings they were taught, or people who are struggling with physical or mental health issues and are just looking for some help.
Mm.
And maybe those are two separate things. If so, we can take them one at a time.
Yeah, I first of all, I would say, oh, I my heart goes out to you for sure because been there, done that, right? And myself struggled with suicidal depression and anxiety where I had to be medicated, and I've found my way through that. I don't take any medication anymore. And the tools that I use to help people, I help myself with. But there's answers, and you don't have to be alone in it, and you don't have to suffer. I think, like I said, those lower level energies really like their homes in us and they like to make us hurt. And when you can understand the power that's available within you and that you don't have to suffer like that you actually have a choice and that you're actually contributing to that pain by allowing those thoughts to be there and not breaking those thoughts up. And it's not a difficult, I work with people maybe 3, 4 times and they're mastering this stuff, and they're getting set free and then not being dependent on me for it, right? It's just the tools that are there to be helpful to them. And so I would say, reach out to me. I know that the Unity Church here locally also helped. I can't testify to every Unity Church, but it still gave me a community and a place to start exploring my belief system in a way that wasn't all hellfire and brimstone or putting a lot of depression and anxiety back on me. So, did I answer your question with that?
Yes. And
Okay.
would you also like to share with people where they can find you?
Oh, definitely. So I have a online site called chosentoheal.com. One word, chosentoheal.com. And that is a way for people remotely if they want to book a private session with me. I'm also working on some group set you free techniques that will be available on that site. I have been local for so long that I've had to kind of scamper to put something together for people to be able to reach out to do remote work with me. But that's the best thing to do on that site. I've also laid down a meditation visualization that includes some of the really special things that I do, vocal toning, light language, and then guided visualization techniques to help to start them on that process of setting them free. So that's free if you just fill out the contact me page on the first part of my website. So they can do those things as far as, being involved with me if they'd like. I love to work with people one on one. I also really like the group work, but the one on one work is so powerful.
Thank you so much, Marta, for being willing to share your story. And I will have your links in the show notes so people can check those out.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate your platform here too and what you're doing to help people find those answers exactly what you asked me, because there's a lot of really great content here for people to learn to get free.
Thank you for watching and listening. Your views, likes, comments, and shares truly make the biggest difference in supporting this channel. Don't forget to check the show notes for all the links to today's guest, as well as my links. You'll find me on social media at Love Covered Life, my website, lovecoveredlife.com, and the Be a Guest link for anybody who would like to be a guest on the channel. I have great news. Love Covered Life podcast is coming available on audio podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your audio podcasts.